All too often have I seen pity led astray. But we who govern men have learnt to plumb their hearts, and we bestow compassion only on what is worthy of our concern. No pity waste I on the shrilly voiced afflictions that fret women's hearts, as I withhold it from the dying and from the dead, and I know wherefore. A time there was, in my younger days, when I pitied beggars in their sores. I hired physicians and procured balsams for them. Caravans from a far-off island brought me those rare unguents laced with gold that mend the torn skin above the flesh. Thus did I, until the day when I discovered that beggars cling to their stench as to something rare and precious. For I had caught them scratching away their scabs and smearing their bodies with dung, like the husbandman who spreads manure over his garden plot, so as to wean from it the crimson flower. Vying with each other, they flaunted their corruption and bragged of the alms they wrung from the tender-hearted. He who had wheedled most likened himself to a high priest, bringing forth from the shrine his goodliest idol for all to gape at and heap with offerings. When they deigned to consult my physicians, it was in the hope that the hugeness and virulence of their cankers would astound him. And how nimbly they shuffled their stumps to have room made for them in the market-places. Thus they took the kindness done for them a homage, proffering their limbs to unctions that flatter their self-esteem. But no sooner were they healed than they found themselves of no account, like barren soil that feeds nothing, and they made haste to revive the ulcers that formerly had battened on their flesh. Then, clad once more in a motley of scabs and sores, they strutted in, begging bowl in hand, and squatted beside the caravan road, where, crying up their noisome gods, they levied tribute of the wayfarers. Also was once a time when I pictured the man whom I had sacrificed in battle in the desert as doomed to agonies of loneliness. Not yet had I learned that there is no solitude for the dying, neither had I come upon their condescension. But then I saw the egoist or miser, that selfsame man who had made so much ado if he were cheated of a penny, bid the members of his household gather round him at his last hour, and share out his chattels with scornful equity, like one scattering gewgaws to a pack of children. Likewise I saw the wounded coward, a man who would have screamed for help in the heart of some insignificant peril, once death's cold hand had touched him, wave help away, if he thought this help would bring his comrades into danger. We praise such selflessness, but there, too, I perceived only a covert form of scorn. And that man also is familiar to me, who shares his water gourd when already he is shriveling in the sun, or his last crust when famine stalks the city. This is because, having lost the craving for these things, he can fling away, with lordly lavishness, his bone or crust for anyone to gnaw. I've seen women weeping for pity of their warrior dead, but it was we who had befooled them. Have you not seen them coming back, the survivors, blustering and bragging, making much of their great deeds, and, in token of the risks they braved, trumpeting the other's death, a death they declared most hideous, for might it not have befallen them also? Why, even I myself, when young, thought fit to wear about my brows the red garland of sword cuts dealt to others, and came back brandishing my dead comrades in the bitterness of their last end. But only he whom death has chosen, who is busy spewing blood or pressing back his entrails, he alone knows the truth of it, that death has no terrors. For now his body seems to him but an instrument for which he has no further use, of which he may as well be rid. A dismantled body, betraying all the flaws that time has wrought. Thus, if that body thirsts, the dying man knows this is but a momentary craving, whereof the sooner he is rid, the better. And how trivial they now appear, all the good things that once served to beautify and nourish and make glad that form of flesh, which has now become something alien to him, a mere chattel, like the ass tethered to its stake. Then begins the last agony, which is no more than the ebb and flow of a mind, now filled, now emptied, of the tides of memory. They come and go, bringing back, as they bore away, their store of half-forgotten scenes, the rack of earlier days and empty shells of once-heard voices. Rising, they lave again the seaweed of the heart, and forthwith all the old loves quiver back to life. But meanwhile, the equinox is mustering its last ebb, and presently the heart is drained. The tide and all its flotsam sink back into God. True, I have seen men flee in panic when death loomed near. But, make no mistake, never have I seen a dying man take fright. Why, then, should I pity the dying? Why waste time mourning their end? Too well have I understood the perfection of the dead. Nothing in my life weighed lighter on me than my meeting with that little captive girl who was given me, when I was 16, to be my plaything. When brought before me, she was already dying, hiding her cough with her scarf and gasping for breath like a gazelle at bay, yet seemingly unaware of her extremity, for she loved to smile. But her smile was like wind on a river, or a dream's afterglow, or a sign's faint hieroglyph, and day by day it grew more tenuous, rarer, harder to retain, till it ended as a thin straight line, the wraith of a sign that had fled forever. Then there was my father's death. Like an effigy hewn in granite, thus he lay, his life accomplished. The assassin's hair, they say, turned white when his dagger, instead of emptying the mortal shell, invested it with such regal majesty. Trapped by the silence he himself had made, the murderer lay hid all night in the royal bedchamber, confronting not a victim, but the huge effigy on a sarcophagus. And at daybreak he was discovered, stricken to his knees by the mere immobility of the dead king. Thus my father, whom a murder had sped headlong into eternity, when he fell on silence, made others hold their breath for 3 full days. To such effect that tongues were loosed, bowed shoulders straightened, only after we had laid him in the tomb. But such was the preponderance of this man, who had not so much ruled as weighed down on his people and stamped them with his massive imprint, that when we lowered him into the grave we seemed not to be burying our dead, but laying a foundation of stone. That which hung on our creaking ropes seemed like the first slab of a temple. Thus we did not inter him, but sealed him in the earth, now that he had become what he was evermore to be, our bedrock. He it was who taught me about death, and forced me when I was yet young to face it squarely, for never did he lower his eyes. 'Twas said that in my father's veins flowed eagle's blood. That's the first half of chapter 1. Just the first half.